Hey guys, it's Mike back with part four of the 320 Saturday Knockout Tournament. Um, we left off here with this Ace 10 here, hand in part three. It was just a raise and take. So let's keep moving right along here. Next hand I play is Ace 9. Again, just wanted to show that I'm opening a lot of pots. That is also just a raise and take. Uh, Very next hand folds around to the small blind, I believe, and he goes in for a raise. I defend with an ace, no real reason to jack it up. I decide to peel with bottom pair, and he barrels, so I just go away. Pretty straightforward. One pair is typically pretty good there, so I decided to peel with the bottom pair. Next hand, he raises again. I decide to flat with sixes. I mean, if I three bet, it's kind of three betting to get it in, which I don't want to really play for that many chips. So I just decide to flat and play small ball. I totally whiff. He c bets and I just go away. Pretty straightforward. Pick up a nice looking hand here. I go in for a raise, and the big blind defends. So he's defending off 20 blinds. So let's see what happens. I'm gonna go in for a c bet on most flops. This one, um, there's there's certain flops that when he peels there that I'm not too stoked about. Like if it came like 8, 9, 10 or 7, 8, 9, stuff like that. But this is, we have backdoor clubs. We have two overs. I don't think he should have too many eights or sixes in his hand. So I'm gonna probably go ahead and c bet here. Yeah, I do. And he flats, so that's fine. I mean, I I there's a lot of hands that he could float with or flat with there. I mean, he's probably calling with any pairs like fours, fives, sevens, stuff like that. And we actually got the best turn card that we possibly could get to be able to barrel here. So I assume I'm going to go ahead and bet again. I probably bet about 6,800, 7,100, and sure enough, he goes away. So I think it's important there that if you're going to c bet those flops with just ace high there, if you do get a card like obviously if a queen were to turn, we could go for value again, or we could check back. I would probably bet again for value, but I think it's important when you do c bet with air and you turn an overcard to. I think it's important to continue barreling on that card. Next hand, Queen 10. I believe it's just a raise and take, nothing too exciting. And then we play a decent sized pot here with queens. Let's see how we get the chips in. So Al has opened under the gun, which, obviously positionally it's usually stronger. Now, he's a pretty active player in general, and he also has huge chips. So, I mean, I think his range could be very wide here. Regardless of his range, I'm three betting to try and get it in with this stack. Not too concerned. So I do go in for a three bet. He decides to flat, which is not not the worst. I think he's gonna flat here with. I don't think he's flatting a ton of aces because I don't think he would flat like ace jack, ace queen maybe, but we obviously block the ace queen, and ace king. I think he's gonna four bet and try to get it in with us. So right away, I'm kind of putting him more so on like medium pairs here. So I really don't hate either avenue here to check back or to bet. But if I check back, I think you gotta call at least one street if he leads the term. So I think it's just easiest to bet here. I think I hope I bet about 8,500 here. Yeah, 7,800. It does the trick. It's gonna let us find out whether he has an ace. He's not gonna call here with pocket sevens. If he does call here, he probably has ace 10, ace jack suited with which was a wide peel pre-flop, or like king queen is possible as well. So he goes away, and we move along. Ace queen obviously go in for a raise, and this guy decides to shove. That's exactly 20 blinds. I think this is pretty standard call. I mean, yes, we are early position, which should be some strength, which means his shove should be a little wider or a little tighter. But at the end of the day, there is the knockout bounty, um, which means we should be calling like maybe a notch looser in this spot. And he's going to be shoving probably ace jack suited, king queen, maybe some, potentially some random stuff like queen jack suited or something like that. And then he's probably going to shove like sevens plus here. So, um, yeah, I think it's a call. It's close, but I think it's a call. And sure enough, he has tens. So we got to win these flips. Unfortunately, we do not. We lose the flip. So we move along. We play a couple small pots. We lost one and we won one. Actually, let's just see these eights here. I think it was just probably a raise and take. Let me just check. Yeah, so just off this stack, I think it's just important to review. Important that we're shoving here, rather than just raising. So we do shove and we get it through. Gets us back up to 28K or so, and we're in the big blind. We pick up a nice hand, ace king, and Alb. Oh wow, interesting spot here. Um, so I know some people who actually might fold ace king here because you know we very likely are up against something like ace queen and a pair, and this guy could also have an ace. So potentially two of our aces are dead, and we're probably up against a pair. So um, it's kind of a situation where I don't love getting it in here with ace king. Um, I know some people who never fold here, don't even consider it. And I know other people who definitely fold here. I just felt like, we have 13 blinds. We're going to need to gamble. This is going to be a huge pot. Well, it already is a huge pot, and we have a chance to triple up here. So I decided to call it off here. And we actually get it in amazingly well. This is very possible. So Alb opens, okay? So he's opening off a huge stack. And Siwas, this is a totally standard jam for him here with, I guess he has 18 blinds. Totally standard for him. And this guy, thanks for your money. I think this is a pretty standard call also because he knows that Alb's opening really wide, which means Siwas can shove pretty wide. Like even Queen Jack here should be a shove, which means he can call wider, which I think I thought about all of that, all those factors, obviously, and the fact that I could potentially be up against King Queen and Ace X, or Ace X and King Queen potentially calls off here, or one pair, and there's a lot of situations where it's not ideal. Like even if he has King Queen in this guy's pocket tens here, it's we're not quite flipping because one of our outs is dead. So this is pretty much as good of a situation as we could find in this particular spot. And the board runs out nicely for us. So we win a big pot. I don't. Oh, actually, he got the knockout. We didn't get that one, but still, we got a huge pot, which was nice. So ace jack. I probably go in for a 3-bet. Yes, I do. Just a small 3-bet. I don't think he's going to peel too wide, even though he's got a big stack. And I mean, I'm fine playing this hand in position. So I just don't want to chunk off too much of my stack here in case he does 4-bet. We obviously have to fold. This guy goes in for a cold 4 shove. It's pretty close to a call there based on, how many chips we've put in. Like, I think we're behind his range, but based on the pot odds, it's close. I'm calling with ace queen for sure. Um, based on the dynamic too. Like Raymond Demon's a reg. He knows Alb's been opening a lot, and he probably knows I'm pretty aggressive. Uh, so I think he can shove wide enough here to make ace queen and almost ace jack a call. But I decided to fold and preserve my chips for other spots. 2 hands later, we pick up ace 7. We go in for a raise. Alb defends. We flop middle pair, and I decide to check back for pot control here. Um, this is a board where I think he's, I think he's calling flop bets a lot here. There's his kind of really connects with his range, even if he doesn't necessarily have us beat at this point. Enough connects with it that he's probably calling like 90% of flop bets or some ridiculously high number of flop bets here, which just inflates the pot. And if he were to lead a turn as some sort of either value or a bluff, I'd kind of have to fold, um, as I do in his position sometimes. Like if for example, if I were to have bet this flop and I'm Alb and some guy C bets the flop and I call, I would potentially lead this turn, which really makes it difficult for hands even like A7 or even a hand like Jacks. It makes it difficult. So I decided to pot control, check back. He does go ahead and he bets out on the turn. Um, I think there's a lot of bluffs in his range here, a lot of semi bluffs, like stuff like Jack 8 of spades or things like that. Which also that's another reason for not betting this flop, because there's a lot. This is a pretty good check raise board for a lot of his hands, and even his bluffs. So, anyways, I decided to turn my hand into a bluff catcher, and he does bet the turn, and he goes ahead and bets the river again. I just feel like that's pretty much the best card on the river for us to be able to call, um, and a good card for him to barrel as a bluff. So I just felt like we had too much equity to be folding here. And sure enough, he has a worse seven. So I'd probably go for value there too. I might check call there if I'm him, but it's close. Interesting hand, anyways. I like the way I played it. I think that is how it should be played. And we got max value there. So next hand, now I have some chips. Folds around to the small blind. I'm not going to fold suited cards that much blind on blind when I have position, especially when it's queen high, as it's typically going to be ahead of their range. So he goes in for a raise. I defend. And again, same as last time, I flop bottom pair, which is usually good. So same as last time, I call. Turn is a 3. I assume check, check, which it is. And river is a 3. I don't know if there's any value to be had here. Some might argue that we could get called by ace high, but I don't like it. I mean, there's really not too much value. It's very, very, very thin, if there is any. And his stack's really too good for a check shove spot, even as a bluff. So just check back and realize your showdown equity. And yeah, I mean, probably not getting called by that. So good spot just to show it down. Pocket nines, we go in for a raise, and Raymond Demon goes in for a shove. He's shoving, what is that, 15 blinds or something. I mean, it's a pretty standard call. We do call, and we're in a standard flip. We flop pretty well, and we got a fade a 7 or a jack there on the river. We scoop another big pot. So that's an important pot. That really gives us some chips to start gambling with. Start putting pressure on people. And I can see on the sidebar here that as soon as I win that pot, I go on to play pretty much every other hand. So I'll show you how I start applying some of the pressure here. Now that I have chips, this is kind of what I like to do. I'm going to be raising a lot. So here, I'm going to open my small blind with pretty much junk, and I get 3 bets, so I go away. But 2 hands later, I pick up king 10. This is kind of how I develop my aggressive dynamic too, because once I get chips, I start playing a lot of pots, and therefore people play back at me. So when I actually do have good hands, I kind of get paid off. So I raised pre-flop. Al peeled the big blind, and I flop a flush draw. I go in for a C bet, and I win the pot. 2 hands later, I do pick up a real hand, which is nice once I've started to raise so many hands. So I obviously go in for a 3 bet here. This is a spot where you could consider flatting if there's a couple you know, if 2 of the 5 guys behind or 3 of the 5 guys behind have reshove stacks, I think it's a decent spot to just flat with queens to try to induce a squeeze shove. But as you can see, only one guy has 39k, like a reshove stack. Everyone else is kind of deeper. And I also thought that with my image that, you know, my overall image, and then also with just the last 15 minutes, my image in the last 15 minutes, that 3 betting here could look, you know, lighter than flatting. And I might actually get a guy like this 92k or someone to cold 4 bet and get into a really big pot. So I decided to 3 bet, and the guy decides to flat me at a position with, and we're really deep. So we get a jack high flop. It's pretty good flop for us. So I assume I'm going to go in and bet here about probably 16k or something, 15k, 17k, same. It's pretty close to the same thing. He decides to call, so his range can be pretty wide still. I think he's calling with 10s and 9s, maybe 8s. He's calling with jack 10, queen jack, all of that stuff. I think kings and aces probably 4 bet pre-flop. Ace jack is probably there. So there's a lot of hands. There's not a ton of hands that we're beat by. Jacks probably, jacks might flat. So I guess jacks might flat, 5s might flat. All the sets are probably there. Anyways, we get a good turn card. I'm going to continue to barrel for value. I bet pretty big because I'm hoping, like, you know, with my image, he can't fold. I'm hoping that he's not able to fold ace jack or queen jack or king jack or something like that here. So I do go in for a big bet, and he decides to go away. I'm also protecting at that point against the flush draw. You know, the pot's gotten pretty big, and so I decided to bet pretty big to charge him for the flush draw or something like ace jack. So sure enough, very next hand, I go in and 3-bet the guy again. I get cold 4-bet, unfortunately, by a short stack, which is like just insanely strong. So I have to go away. But as you can see, I'm continuing to put pressure on. A few hands later, I pick up pocket 8s. I usually always flat here, but I might 3-bet. I'm not exactly sure for 2 reasons. Actually, I'm almost sure I 3-bet here. Usually I would flat, but this is a knockout tournament where it's a super knockout, so it's half the value of the tournament. As you can see, this guy here flatted off a really short stack. So I'll probably 3-bet pretty big here to try to get Alb out of the pot and to isolate this guy for his bounty. If it wasn't a bounty tournament, I might flat here, but because of how deep I am, I might 3-bet also. I do decide to go in for almost a full 3x 3-bet. The guy decides to just flat call, which is pretty hilarious. And I'm going to just get it in here on any flop, obviously, when he has 6k behind. And he decides to fold. So, I mean, we do win the pot, but obviously we want him to be calling off here with like 6s, 7s, stuff like that. So it's unfortunate that we didn't get his bounty, but we'll obviously be pushing for oh no, he's gone now, so someone else got him. But I continue to keep the pressure on, raising it up. King jack. I'm going to c-bet here, and he goes away. So just keeping the pressure on when you have chips like this, I think, is important. And maybe I think I take about 10 hands off. I was super card dead, and then it looks like I played a string of hands here in a row. So I raise up queen 10 of hearts. Guy flats me, who's also super deep. I decided to check here on the flop. I mean, betting is fine also, but you're never getting a pair to fold here, and we're inflating the pot. If it's not a paired board and it's like say it's 9-6-4 2 hearts, I'm probably c-betting. I just like to have a little bit more pot control when it's a paired board. You know, because obviously it's a flush versus a full house situation. It's going to be a very big pot, and it's going to be hard to get away. So anyways, I now pick up more equity on the turn. I have an open-ended straight draw with a flush draw, so I decide to go in for a bet. He does call, and we river the flush, so now I'm going to go in pretty big, and he folds. So we're obviously hoping to get called by a jack there, but he went away. Very next hand, we get into a massive pot, it looks like. So again, this is the very next hand. I've been playing a ton of pots. I raise. I get 3-bet by a really good reg. Um, I four bet, I'm four betting to get it in here. And I mean, in order for us to get this in for this many chips, it's going to have to be a pretty big cooler. So he five bets. And sometimes I get a little clicky here and just click it back. But realistically, he knows now that he knows I know that once he puts that many chips in the pot, he's not folding. And I know he knows that I know that. So um, I decide just to rip to try to make it look like ace king so that for one, his ace king never folds, and so that his queens and jacks never fold either. Because he's not really, if I click it on him here, it's not like he's going to think he has fold equity if he shoves. He knows I'm getting it in. So it's not like my hand looks, it's not like it looks bluffy when I do that because I'm just never 6-bet folding or 7-bet folding or whatever it is. So I just shove and he calls it off and he has queen. So it's a pretty huge cooler for him. Really good spot for us. And we win a massive pot. We continue on. So now we're up to 385,000. Very next hand, I pick up pocket threes. And this is pretty loose. I would never call here in a regular tournament. I decided to gamble, one, because of my chip stack. I remember I tanked on this hand and really gave it some thought. And I just felt like, I think there's a lot of ace jack plus here, king queen, stuff like that. And I just felt because of my stack, I could afford the gamble. If I only had 150 or 180K, I'd probably fold. I felt like I could take out the bigger pairs out of his range, like tens or jacks plus. So if I'm beat by a pair, like if I'm crushed here, it's fours through sevens or eights or nines. So yes, there are some pairs here that are going to beat me, but I just felt like it was mostly ace jack plus, king queen, and so I decided to gamble it, mainly because it was a bounty tournament and because of my stack. And we end up fading, you know, quite a few outs there on the turn. So win another nice pot. I think by this point I'm chip leader in the tournament now, actually. Like pretty healthy chip leader. Go in for a raise with queen 10, pretty standard. This guy's now 3-bet us twice in a row, or two blind on blinds in a row. This is an interesting spot. I peel his 3-bet and I flop top pair, and I'm pretty sure I fold here. Had he bet a standard sizing, like, I don't know, 18, 20K, I'm never folding. But to me, this looks like a really strong hand that he's trying to build a pot to play a massive pot because, he's trying to get all of the chips in. And the only way to get them all in is to bet really big on each street. So I feel like he's just really nutted here, and just hopes that and that's also a board that kind of should hit my peeling range pretty good, my 3-bet peel range. So I think he's just smashing this pot, hoping that I do get stubborn with top pair. I decided to make a really disciplined fold and just, it seems weird that I'm peeling 3-bets out of position, flopping top pair, and then going away. I would never have done that. That was not my intention pre-flop, but when he smashes like 75% pot, I changed my mind and decided that to go away just because, if he is bluffing, he's probably not stopping on the turn. And so like he bets 33K into 49. If I call, that's now the pot's 115K. He's probably going to bet like 65K on the turn. And am I really going to call on the turn if it's even if it's like a 6 of diamonds? Or what do I do if it's king of diamonds? So it gets pretty ugly and it's going to get pretty huge. So I just decided to go away. We actually go on a bit of a, looks like we lost a bunch of hands in a row here. Not in a row, but not one after the next. But, well, yes, we lost a bunch of pots in a row, but they weren't the hand after hand after hand. So yeah, I peel a pre-flop bet, and I flop middle pair, so I'm going to call again. I think I called on the turn too, and then let's just replay this hand. I didn't really see what happened Yeah, so he raises pre, I defend. He checks, and I decide to bet, which I'm kind of surprised, but I just wanted to see where I stood in the hand. Um, and then I decide to double barrel. You notice that I go really small on the turn. I'm going for cheap showdown here. And then I obviously I'm doing that to check back the river for cheaper showdown. Then we lose, looks like a raise and a shove or something. Jack 10 here. So Jack 10 I raise, guy re-raises, cold 4 bet, obviously a shove. And then we lose a King Jack a few hands later. Probably me 3-betting. This is just like one of the better hands, King Jack, Ace Jack offsuit to 3-bet here. So I do 3-bet and I get cold 4 shoved all in. Can't be calling that. Then Ace 10 offsuit, I go in for a raise. I mean, you got to be aware about the stacks, but the reshove stacks behind. But anyways, I flop top pair and decide to go for a bit of pot control. See Moose Power is really tricky and really aggressive. So I just wanted to pot control against him specifically a little bit there. I bet the turn and he goes away. Okay, so Alb, I decide to peel here, suited 5-9, a little bit loose, like I'm not peeling if it's not suited, but I'm doing this because of how deep we are. The implied odds if I were to flop well are pretty good. So he checks back. Typically this shows showdown value. I turn the nut though, so not quite the nut, but the second nuts with the redraw, hearts redraw. He does call, and I'm obviously going to bet hard for value. I kind of feel like I should have gone smaller. I think a king bets that flop. It's quite likely that he has like queens here, even something like ace 7. So I think I should bet small and hope to get, uh, thin value. We lose a decent sized pot here with ace jack. So I probably 3-bet. Yeah, 3-bet squeeze here. J and F's are really good. This table's pretty filled with some good players. J and F decides to go with 4-bet. I mean, that's what's so good about his play, is I don't necessarily believe him that he's got a huge hand here, but there's just not much I can do. It's just a good spot for him to do that light, and there's just not much I can do. I guess I could 5-bet, but I have a good stack. There's really no point in getting carried away like that, so I just decide to fold. Ace 4 suited from the big blind. I decide to peel against Moose Power. I flop 2 pair, just a check call scenario. He's really aggressive. I probably call here if he bets turn. And then, yeah, there's not really many rivers that I'm going to bet for value. I could probably go for value here, actually. I don't know. It's maybe pretty thin. What am I really getting called by? Yeah, it's probably pretty thin. Better to check and try to let him bluff. He checks back, queen 9. Yeah, I much prefer checking there and trying to let him bluff, especially against an aggressive player like him. So I'm not sure. I do both here. I'm really not sure what I would have done. I know that, I kind of like flatting here just to try to induce this 93K. Positionally, if I 3-bet here, this Roger guy probably shouldn't shove too wide just because under the gun raise and a 3-bet by me when we're really deep stacked usually shows quite a great deal of strength. So I think I probably flat here more often than not. Yeah, hoping that he jams. So I'm not going to fold to 1-bet. And if I'm JNF, I'm not just doing 1-bet. I think he should know my range consists of like any pair here. twos right through to jacks, and then I probably am three betting queens plus. So, and it's pretty unlikely. Like, I mean, I could have king queen, king jack, maybe ace king. I'm probably three betting. So it's pretty unlikely I have a king. It's much more likely to be in his range. So if I'm him, I'm definitely double barreling. And I think that's an error a lot of players make, is that they don't barrel flops like this, because realistically the most likely hands that I have are like, yeah, obviously I could have a set, but fives, sevens, eights, nines, tens, etc. Jacks. So anyways, I call. The big blind goes away. Turn is a 7, and I have the spade. This is an interesting spot. Most people check back here. Um, I usually do as well, especially with the jack of spades, because it gets really gross here if he were to check raise us to like 70k. I don't think that happens much unless he actually has like the nut flush. But it's pretty gross with how much equity we have to get check raised off this pot. There's the occasional time that he is going to bluff us off. But I also think that there's some value. We're kind of merging here. I mean, I guess at this point we're not really ever getting better to fold. There's a chance that queens might fold here. But I also think queens might check the flop. So anyways, I think you get called by stuff like ace 7, ace of spades. Um, you know, things like that. Any ace of spades hand might call here. So we're trying to get value from the draw, and he folds. So we're kind of protecting slash trying to get value. This will be the last hand of this particular segment. So what happened was Manon opened off of about 21 blinds. And I decided to go in for a 3-bet, which is kind of strange because his hand should be pretty nutted here. I decided to go in for a 3-bet to really put the pressure on him. We're pretty deep in this tournament now, and 21k doesn't really hurt me that much. I don't like flatting here, but I have blockers to some of the bigger hands, and I just felt like putting him in a spot where he has to jam his last 100k in if he wants to play. So I did put him in a tough spot. He does decide to call, which is strange, and I don't hate either option, checking back or betting here. The only thing is, it's pretty unlikely that he has ace queen. 1, because I have a blocker, and 2, because it's hard to flop 2 pair. And 2, if he had ace king, it's certainly going in pre-flop. Fairly unlikely that he has ace jack. So I think I like betting the best. Or you could check back and just go call. So I don't hate either option. I do bet and he folds. We are protecting a little bit. Like, we really, because we have to call kind of regardless what cards come, we pretty much have to go call. It's pretty ugly if it comes like king on the turn or jack on the turn, which gives him his potential Broadway straights. So anyways, I decided to bet. He goes away, and we scoop another pot. And that's where we're going to cut off session or part 4. So hopefully you guys enjoyed another part. Love to hear your feedback on the in the forums, and we'll see you for part 5. Thanks, guys.